Welcome back everybody, and if you're new here, then welcome to the channel. For today's video, it's actually going to be a requested video, and it is going to be about the assembly overview of the Tao-Tao pit bike. And I want to go ahead and say that this video was actually requested by Sterling the Great Gaming _ so I just want to say thank you for the request. And as you can see, my pit bike is obviously already put together, but what I'm going to do is just go through step by step and explain to you guys exactly the process that I took in putting it together. As we should all know by now, the pit bike will come in a metal crate, but once you have gotten your bike free, you're going to have to put it on some type of stand. Now, if you don't have a bike stand, you can use a 10-gallon bucket or like a milk crate, just anything sturdy that's going to get your bike up off of the ground. And I did in fact take a picture once it was out of the crate and on a stand. I will put that up on the screen right now so you guys can see that. Now that you've seen what the pit bike will look like once you get it up on the stand, the very first thing that I did was tighten down the shock. You just tighten down your bolt and your nut on the bottom. The one at the top should already be pretty well tightened down. Really, you'll have to test all of your nuts and bolts on here, but tightening down that was the first thing that I did. Step number 2 was the handlebars. Your handlebars will just come hanging by your brake lines. Though putting the handlebars on is a super simple step. As you can see right here, your handlebars are what take the Allen wrench that comes in your little tool pouch. What you're going to do is you're just going to loosen these up, and this little top bracket pulls right off, and your Allen wrench bolts will be real long. So you're going to take these off, and you'll take your handlebars and you'll line them up. There are grooves in here that help you to get your handlebars lined up in the middle. So you'll put those on there, and then you'll just put these brackets back on, and then you just tighten them down. Once you have your handlebars on and secured, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to take off your front plate right here. And the reason that you're going to want to do that is just to fit your brake and your clutch cables behind there. I'm also going to count this as step number 3, since you're really going to do these kind of at the same time. Now that you've got your handlebars and your front plate on, you're going to put on your front fender, and your front fender will come strapped to your back tire. There are 3 bolts that also take an Allen wrench, and these bolts actually come in your little bag of bolts. Step number 4, and the biggest reason why you have to have your pit bike on a stand, is putting on the front tire. When you remove your pit bike from the metal crate, your forks right here, if you don't know what the forks are, these are your forks, are going to be attached to the metal crate by the axle and the spacers. You're going to have to take off the axle and the spacers, and that will release your bike from the metal crate. Hopefully you already know that. And your nut that goes on the other side of your axle will also be in the bag of tools that comes with the pit bike, so it will be separate. When you release your axle from the forks and the metal crate, you're going to have 2 little spacers that come out with it. They might be on the correct side when you take them out, but mine was not. So what you have to remember about these spacers is, if you're sitting on the bike, the long one goes on the left and the short one goes on the right if you're sitting on the bike. And the reason the one on the left needs to be long is because it goes into the side of the rotor. And you know your rotor goes on the left because that's where your caliper is. Now for me, before I could put the front tire on, what I had to do was unscrew these mud shields and just have them hanging loose because of these flaps right here on the side. it was difficult and they wanted to rub against the tire, and it made it so much harder to get everything lined up. So just went ahead and loosened these so I could, you know, move them out of the way. Okay, now before you can work on getting your wheel on, you're gonna have to come down here to your brake caliper, and between your brake pads there will be a little plastic keeper between them. I'll try to point to where that'll be. The keeper will be right here. It's not hard to miss. Just a little piece of plastic that slides right in there. Now once you take that out, it's very, very important that you do not pull your brake lever. What that will do is it will tighten up your caliper, and essentially you will not be able to slide the rotor in the caliper. I will mention that I have seen where some pit bikes will come with a keeper on the, I'm going to use my light to point, on the front brake right here, and it would be right underneath there. Some bikes do come with a plastic keeper there. Mine did not. If yours does, then you'll have to take the plastic keeper off of your brake lever first, and then take the one off of your caliper. Once you've gotten your mud shields loosened and out of the way, you've got your plastic keeper out of your caliper, now you're ready to slide the front wheel on. And for this, like I said, your bike should already be on a stand, so you shouldn't have to do any type of lifting. And now what you'll have to do is, I know this is really hard to see, guys. What you'll have to do is, your bike will be on the stand, and you'll just take your wheel, and you're gonna line up your rotor in your caliper between your brake pads. You'll know where it goes when you see it. And you'll just take and you'll just line them up and slide it right through. Once you've gotten your rotor in your caliper, you're gonna slide your axle all the way through. Okay, now to do this, you're gonna go ahead and prepare your axle and your first spacer, which is gonna be the little one. You're gonna go ahead and have your axle partially push through your first fork, so that when your wheel is lined up in the right spot, you're gonna be able to push it through. So you have your axle partially through your fork. You're gonna get your wheel lined up the best that you can. You're gonna take your first spacer, and with one hand you're gonna line it up, while with the other hand you're going to line up your wheel. You're going to use the pressure from your wheel to hold your spacer in place while you slide your axle through. We've got the rotor in the caliper, we've got the first spacer in, and we've got our axle halfway through. And what you're going to do, you're going to take your second spacer and you're going to hold it in place while you slide your axle all the way through. If you wanted to do this in reverse, to where you put the long spacer on first, you would just flip your axle around so that the head would be on this side and then your lock nut would be on this side. I don't want to confuse you in saying that. I just want to make it 100% clear that no matter what, the long spacer goes on the left if you're riding. So when I say switch it around, I'm just talking about the axle. So then once you've got your axle in, you've got your spacers in the right spot, you're going to take the lock nut again that comes in your bag of supplies or tools, whatever you want to call it, and you're just going to tighten it down. Then once you've got your wheel tightened down, you're going to put your mud shields back on. You're going to go ahead and tighten those back down, get those back in place. The whole front of the bike, you should be done. Alrighty, moving on to step 5 is going to be to put on your back brake lever. I'm going to go ahead and preface this by saying this one's going to be a little bit harder for me to explain, simply because I don't really know the names of all this stuff, but we'll give it a go. Alright, now if you look, you're going to see this brass colored rod right behind your swing arm. And you're going to follow it down here. You'll see this pin and this little keeper right here. This end right here is like a little bracket is what I'm going to call it. It turns. And so you're going to have to turn it to where it will line up with your back brake, because it's all one piece here and it goes all the way back. So you'll have to, like I said, tighten it or loosen it, which is going to move it up or down to line it up with this end of the back brake. And again, in your little bag of tools that you get, it's going to come with this little spring right here. And if I remember correctly, this little clip should already be placed right here. So you'll have to take that clip out first. You're going to pull it out and you're going to take off this washer. And you're going to take this spring and you're going to thread it through this hole right here. The way that I did it is I slid the brake lever on first, and then I took a screwdriver and used leverage and pulled the spring up into its place. And you'll see this right here sticking out, and it'll have a little notch on it, so you know that's where your spring goes. And what you might have to try is feeding the spring through, hooking it onto here, and then using the leverage from your lever, pull it down and then push your lever on here. That might work better. I'm not positive. That's not how I did it, but I will tell you that doing it the way that I did it, to pull the spring and put it on there, was extremely hard. You might have to try a couple different options to get that on there, because spring is very, very tight. Once you have your brake lever slid on, you have your spring in place, that's when you're going to, back out here, you're going to slide your washer back on, and then you're going to put this little keeper pin, you're going to slide that back in there, and I just took and bent the ends back. Loosen this piece up in here, and you're going to line it up with your brake lever. And then you're going to take this pin in the middle and you're going to slide it through, and then you'll put this little keeper back in. If you look right here on the back of this bar, again, I'm sorry, I don't know what it's called, but there's a lock nut back here, and you're just going to tighten that down. And that should complete the assembly of your back brake lever. I know that's a little bit complicated and I probably didn't explain it very well. You're also going to need to check your tire pressure, and you can do that before or after you change the oil. I think I did it after I changed mine. Now I also want to mention, and I forgot to do this, once I had my front wheel on, that is when I took my bike off of the stand, just because the stand that I was using was keeping me from being able to put my lever on. So depending on the stand that you use, you may have to take your pit bike off of it to be able to get this on. But now at this point, we have our wheel on, our handlebars, our fender, we have our brake lever and our shock. You're going to remove the bike from the stand, I haven't already done that, and you're going to change the oil. Now I'm not going to go over changing the oil, just because last week I did a whole video on that. So if you're interested in that, if you don't know how to do that, I'll put an annotation on here somewhere. You can go ahead, click over onto that. The link will also be in the description. Hey guys, I believe that's everything. And of course, if you've seen my videos before, you know, if you have any questions, drop those in the comments, and I always try to answer those the best that I can. And I have to admit, this video was so much harder to make than I thought. It is super hard to explain all of this stuff. I hope you guys understood me well enough to at least help you out a little bit. Last thing that I don't think I mentioned, please go through, check all of your nuts and your bolts, and just make sure everything is properly tightened down. As always, thank you guys for watching this video, and I will see you next week.